Hello and welcome to the ROKER Report podcast in association with Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. My name is Rich Spate and I'm joined for this very special episode, this playoff episode of the podcast, by the chairman of Lincoln City Football Club, Clive Nates. How are you this evening, Clive?
Yeah, good, Rich. All good here in South Africa and happy to be speaking to you.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, I'm in Wales, you're in South Africa, and we're talking about Lincoln and Sunderland. It's a global game. And it's lovely to get you on the podcast this week. So, Clive, you've been chairman, I think, since June 2018 of Lincoln City Football Club. For Sunderland fans who might not be familiar with your background, can you tell us a little bit about how and why you got involved with Lincoln City?
As a kid, I was soccer crazy, and or I should rather say football crazy. And if you're football crazy in South Africa, you support an English football team. My hero as a kid was Alan Ball. He played for Everton, so I became an Everton fan. And I loved looking across the whole pyramid. The promotions and relegations across all the leagues were fascinating. And in 2002, Everton actually had an alliance with Lincoln City. And basically from that time, I just started to follow the Imps. And I think the more that they were battling towards the bottom of League Two and then going into non-league, I just followed them more and more. So when I decided to tick off the number one item on my bucket list to get involved with an English football club, Lincoln City was the natural choice. And I had retired from being a hedge fund manager, and in early 2015, the club was told by their bankers that they were withdrawing their loan and overdraft facilities. I sent off an email to the club and put me in touch with the chairman, and here I am 6 years later, chairman of the club, and we've got a chance of getting into the championship.
Well, absolutely. It's been a really meteoric rise, really. I mean, in 2017, you were in the National League. Then you won League Two in the first season with, I think it was John Akinde scoring a good few goals for you that season, wasn't it? And then you consolidated in League One last season, and now you're in the playoffs. It's been really impressive progress, and it's something that I'm sure other clubs will be looking to learn from. What do you think have been the key factors in this success?
I think there are a lot of factors, but without a doubt, two of the biggest key factors are choosing the right manager. And the other is getting the right staff in place on the ground at the club. So obviously Danny and Nicky did brilliantly with us. Michael this season, as you can see, has done fantastically well with a very young team, with a budget in the lower half. And off the field, we try to bring in somebody that had EFL experience when we got promoted back into the Football League. And Liam Scully has built up a brilliant team off the field. And I think the combination of getting the right people on the field and the right people off the field is really what's behind our success.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic success. And you talk about the importance of the management teams that you've had in place. Obviously, Danny and Nicky Cowley, I think many Sunderland fans, when we were looking for a new manager, were very keen on Danny and Nicky, and obviously they've gone over to Ipswich now, and I'm sure we'll be pushing on next season. How important, because it seems like there's been a kind of a consistency in the style of play. How important do you think it has been that kind of consistency and approach on the pitch has been in terms of the success of Lincoln?
Well, look, it actually has changed, I would say, significantly from where we were in National League and where we are now in League One. I think we were all in a hurry, certainly National League, to progress as quickly as we could. And even in League Two, we had the ability to compete with the top clubs in League Two. So at least in the second season that we were in League Two, we had a budget in the top four. And took advantage of that to get promoted. But coming into League One, we've definitely had a change the way we play. We know that there's no chance we can compete with the big clubs in League One like Sunderland. So we have to look at developing our own players, bringing through players from other teams and developing them and trying to sell on those players. And if you're looking to do that, you have to play ideally with a different style. You've got to play with a more attractive style, playing out from the back. If you're going to play Route 1 football, you're not going to find a market for your players.
That's really interesting, actually, because there's been a lot of talk recently about, the influence of the style of play in the Premier League. And it's interesting to hear from a business point of view that aligning the club with what might be attractive in terms of buying players further up the pyramid is important for what happens on the pitch in League One. I think that's something a lot of clubs, I think, will be learning from. And I've seen over the last 3 years of us being in League One, more teams playing better and more attractive football over that period. But obviously this year we've had, it's been a very difficult year for everyone. We've had COVID-19, and I was wondering how that's impacted Lincoln City as a business. It's a very different size of club to Sunderland, and I'm assuming that match day revenue as well as player sales has been a really important revenue stream for you in the past. And I was wondering how you've managed to cope with that over this period.
Yeah, it's been a difficult period. I mean, a year ago, we were unsure as to what the future would be like. I think the first priority was survival. And when it came to looking at extending any contracts of players whose contracts had come to an end at the end of last season, we weren't in a position to do that. And it was only, let's say, towards the end of June, when we got a bit more certainty as to how things might look, that we were able to really start putting a budget forward. Even initially, it wasn't that definitive. It was only with time where we were sure that we were going to get back to play. Obviously, we heard that there wouldn't be fans initially. So we had to cut back significantly on our budget. It was 40% below it was in 2019-20. And that's why, or at least it's one of the reasons why we have a budget in the lower half of teams in League One.
So obviously you're overachieving this season on that budget, that lower half of the table budget, but and maybe that is a testament to the philosophy that you've instituted through the club and your team on the ground have. Did you, a question I guess a lot of Sunderland fans will be asking and as asked of, I guess, all club chairmen that we speak to, is about how last season ended. It was ended on average points per game. And I think for a lot of Sunderland fans, it's been a bit of a sore point in that there's the view that it denied us the chance to make a late season charge for promotion, whereas I'm possibly in the minority in accepting it as kind of a necessary evil for the good of the EFL overall. Can you explain your decision making around that? I mean, how did you vote in that, and what were the factors that came into your decision?
I don't think there was any question how we would vote when eventually the vote took place. The vote took place, very, very late. And I think even those teams that voted in favour of continuing the season did it with the full knowledge that it was totally impractical to start the season at that point. We were 3 to 4 weeks behind the championship. Playoffs would have only taken place in the second half of August. How would we have been able to go from the end of that season into a season, that was so compacted in any event? It just wouldn't have been possible. If we had voted, in time to start at the same point as the championship, then possibly it could have been a different decision. But For whatever reason, the EFL decided, because there were so many different views on what to do, there was no other option for us. One of the options that I'm surprised that teams like Sunderland and Peterborough didn't push for was to extend the number of teams in the playoff from 4 to 6, as takes place in non-league. It just seemed to me a logical decision to try and push for in extenuating circumstances, but for some reason there were all sorts of weird alternatives that were put forward. Even 16 teams going into some playoff, so that we, as the 16th place team, might have even had to play Coventry. Absolutely crazy alternatives that were put to us.
At that point, I guess there was no financial package that was agreed in order to support the rollout of whatever alternatives to ending the season on points became. There was nothing there to enable it to happen financially. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was one of the other big problems. There would have been significant additional costs for clubs to undertake COVID testing, and to make it viable for League One clubs, to pay for those costs. It was imperative for the EFL to come up with some way of financing that, which they weren't able to do. I know it was tough on the likes of Peterborough and yourselves, but no club was probably punished more than Tranmere. But to be honest, I couldn't see an alternative other than extending the playoffs to 6 teams.
And looking at finance and alternatives and creative solutions, one of the things I think that has impressed many football fans across England, across the world possibly, is the scheme that you initiated with the Red Imps Community Trust last year to convert potential refunds on season tickets into shares in the club. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how that worked and how the scheme's actually operated and gone so far?
Well, we didn't play, I think it was the last 5 games plus the Bury game. So there were 6 games essentially where fans had built up credits, and we decided to give them the ability to convert those credits into shares, either in their own name or in the name of the trust. And around 80% of season ticket holders converted their credits into shares, which amounted to about £340,000, which was a fantastic amount of money for us under the circumstances we were operating under.
And that's brilliant, is it? Because that's bringing the fans on board in the kind of enterprise of keeping Lincoln City and the league going. And so I think it's wonderful, and we've heard in the past about how involved your supporters have been in the club and in the life of the club and in kind of raising the profile of the club and bringing more people along to the ground. And so I think it's fantastic that you found a way of getting them to help the club through what was the most kind of financially stressful time, I guess, in the recent history of football. I've noticed that recently you've managed to secure further investment from an American-based individual who's invested in the club. What does that deal kind of look like, and how important is it going to be if Lincoln do somehow get past Sunderland and then whoever in the final and get into the Championship?
Yeah, look, it's important for us to keep trying to bring in new investment, because a lot of what we're trying to do is not only invest in players, but it's to improve the infrastructure. We've got a relatively old stadium, so that needs a lot of money to keep improving that. We've got a training ground, which was only set up 3 seasons ago. So there's a lot of plans to try and improve that. So definitely there is a desire to bring in further investment. This US investor was introduced to us via an intermediary who I'd been in touch with for a while, and he seemed to think that we would be a good fit because the only type of investors we are looking for are like-minded people like us. We're not in the club to make any money out of it. We're in it because we love football, we love the club, and we're trying to take it as far as we possibly can. And, with that criteria, it's not easy to find people to invest in a football club. So this is a connection that was made back end of last year. We've had ongoing Zoom meetings over the last couple of months, and we expect the investment to be completed in the next few weeks. It's a minority investment. He has no desire to change anything about the club. At this stage, he won't be even becoming a board member. So it's, again, very much the sort of ideals that all of us that sit on the board have for the club.
That sounds really interesting, and I think Sunderland fans are very familiar with the long drawn out process of getting investment in a football club during a pandemic. I can't imagine it's been an easy task to bring somebody on board like that. But we're coming out the other end of it now, hopefully, fingers crossed, and touching all sorts of wood, and fans will be allowed back in the grounds for the upcoming fixtures for the playoff semi-finals. I think is it 3,145 will be back inside Sincil Bank?
Yeah,
which is how much of what's the capacity of the ground? Is about 10.
It's just over 10,000. Yeah.
So that's a good third of the, it's nearly a third of the capacity, and so I'm guessing you'll be expecting a really good atmosphere there and a very different spectacle on Wednesday from the game that we had back in December.
Yeah, I would expect it to be quite different. I mean, both our teams have disappointing home records, but it could be very different with fans in, albeit 30% in our case and around 25% at the Stadium of Light. But after you've been away for over a year from being in the stadium, I would imagine even the quietest of fans will be making a noise.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun seeing messages from fellow Sunderland fans who've got their tickets for the second leg, including my dad. I wish I was able to go. I'm not a season ticket holder because I live over in Wales. I try to go as many away games as I can in normal times, but I can't right now. So it's been lovely to see that, and I think all football fans will be glad. Sunderland fans will be glad to see Lincoln fans in the ground when they're watching on TV Wednesday, I'm sure. So you've had a really, really good season to get where you are. As you said, you've got a budget that's in the bottom half of the League One table in terms of spending. But you set the pace early on in the season. There were some fantastic results, really quick out of the blocks. Why do you think that was?
Well, I think that was a huge surprise to us because of all the clubs in League One, we had the biggest change in the squad from the previous season. Also, we had a lot of change in the previous January transfer window. And then obviously with this season being curtailed in March, there wasn't really enough time for those players that were brought in January to even settle into the club. And with all the further changes in the summer, I think if anything, we all expected it would be a bit slow. So it was a surprise and massive credit to Michael and the whole backroom team to have got the team, up to speed so quickly.
I mean, when we came to Sincil Bank in December, we were on a real low ebb. You were riding pretty high. We managed to come out of that game as 4-0 victors, but I think among Sunderland fans that victory is talked about as very fortunate. I mean, you really should have been 2-0 up in the first few minutes of that game. Do you think that game represented something of a change in kind of the season maybe for both teams?
I don't think so much for us. I think we lost the next game but got back on track again. So I think it was only further on this season that we hit a difficult patch. 3-2 up against Plymouth was, for me, the change or, the cause really of going into a bit of a slump. 3-2 up, really cruising, missing a chance to go 4-2 up and losing that game 4-3. And then we lost the next game at home. And so the injuries picked up. We lost George Grant through a lengthy injury in that game against Plymouth. And it took a while for us to get back on track. We were also hit quite badly by COVID. And, it's only post, let's say, that break, we've actually started to pick up again. And most of I think all of our important players that have been out through injury are now back fit again.
So and that must be a real boost for Michael Appleton and the team to have those players coming back. Who do you think have been the most standout players for Lincoln this season? Obviously, you've had a great amount of change, as you've explained, but who do you think will be in the lineup, say, for your Player of the Year awards this season?
Well, certainly George Grant has been a big player for us. 17 goals. Brennan Johnson and Morgan Rogers, who are on loan from Nottingham Forest and Man City, respectively. Big players. Conor McGrandles in midfield. Tom Hopper up front. Joe Walsh in defence has been fantastic for us, although he's been out quite a bit throughout the season. And Lewis Monsma, who we signed from the Dutch second tier as a central defender, has scored 9 goals this season. So, there's really a whole lot of players that have come to the party. And even someone like Anthony Scully, who hasn't necessarily always been in the team, has also managed to score 17 goals this season.
That's really impressive. I mean, our goals have been very much concentrated in Charlie Wyke. I think other than him, I think Grant Ledbetter's our second highest scorer, and he's the penalty taker. It's a very different proposition from having a team where the goals seem to be spread about and to one where obviously we've got a focal point to our attack. Other than maybe Charlie Wyke, who's the obvious one, who amongst the Sunderland squad keeps you awake at night worrying?
Well, obviously the ex-Everton player, Aidan McGeady, 14 assists, I believe, and got to keep him and Charlie Wyke, quiet for starters. Doesn't mean that you don't have to worry about a couple of other players in your side. You've, obviously got a lot of talent in your squad. But without a doubt, you need to keep Aidan McGeady quiet. Yeah,
that's very astute observation there. Yeah, definitely. Those two are it's very very much shown. They both got in the League One Team of the Year, and I think it's through their combination play that they've done that. So I'm not going to ask you for a score prediction, but I will thank you very much for your time this evening, Clive. It's been really interesting to speak to you and be really interesting to find out about what's going on at Lincoln City. So I wish you all the best for, maybe not for the next week, but beyond that. Wish you all the best. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks very much, Rich. Best of luck beyond the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.